Hello, this is Hwansan S님. Once again, whatever we're doing, whatever is on our minds, let's put all of that down and let's enter into sun meditation together. Please assume correct meditation posture. Just let your eyes relax. Once we have attained stability in our meditation posture, now let us enter into preparation breathing. Together, inhale, hold, and then exhale. We are only focused on our posture and our breathing now. One more time, inhale. Hold, and then exhale. And now let's enter into abdominal breathing, the main breathing pattern of formal sun meditation. So inhale, hold, and then exhale. Once again, inhale, hold, and then exhale. And now let's enter into the hwadu, the question, imoko, that we ask ourselves. This is the focus, the heart, and the core of sun meditation practice. We will ask ourselves the question, imoko, this, what is this? And we take that last syllable, go, and we stretch it to the end of the out-breath. Why don't we practice this out loud? So together, inhale, hold, and then out loud, imoko. Once again, inhale, hold, and then together, imoko. Now, as we continue to practice sun meditation in our daily lives, as it becomes more familiar to us, as our bodies and minds become more habituated to us, to practicing meditation in this way, we can go a step further in our meditative progress. And what this means is, as we continue to practice imoko and generate the state of doubt and combine it with our posture and our breathing, we begin to experience the doubt, both mentally and physically. Sun Master Jeongang, the teacher of Sun Master Songdam, states that when we become more familiar with the practice of generating doubt, that is the purpose of sun meditation. Every time we ask ourselves the hwadu, the question, imoko, it's like hitting a giant temple bell. There is a kind of resonance, a wave of doubt, an outwardly spreading wave of doubt that passes through our bodies and through our consciousness. And as our practice develops, this resonance, just as a powerful bell, when you hit it just once, the ring of it lasts for many seconds, maybe even minutes. When we get to that level of practice, we no longer have to mechanically repeat imoko, imoko with every single breath. And just like the ring and resonance of a temple bell, it reaches a peak, a crescendo, and then it begins to fade. And as it begins to fade, other thoughts rise up, other mental imagery, and we lose that state of doubt. And when we become aware that we're losing, that it's fading out, then on the next breath, we breathe in again, hold, and then we again, in our minds, intone imoko. And that's like hitting the bell again. It's like hitting the bell again before the ring of the bell has ended. So you have this constant ringing of the bell, constant resonance of the bell. In our bodies and minds, we have the constant wave resonance of the state of doubt. According to Sun Master Songdam, eventually, we just need to say it a few times a day, and our day will be filled with the resonance of the great doubt. Eventually, he tells us, based on his own meditation experience, we only need to say it once a day when we wake up in the morning. And then we are in the state of doubt for the whole day. And even at night, in our dreams, in the deepest states of unconsciousness, that doubt is resonating within our minds. Eventually, even when we wake up, the doubt is there, and we no longer need to keep asking ourselves imoko over and over again. And this, when we reach that state where the doubt is self-sustaining, on its own momentum, it continues to grow and pervade our consciousness, our body, until, in Sun Master Songdam's words, the entire universe is filled with a doubt. At that time, we have achieved that idea that I mentioned at the outset of this explanation, which is the mass of doubt manifesting alone. The entire universe, reality itself, has become a mass of doubt, manifesting itself. So this is the ultimate goal of Sun meditative practice. And when we reach this state where the mass of doubt is manifesting alone, then according to Sun Master Songdam, in just a few days, a week at most, we will experience the awakening of our consciousness that Buddhists call enlightenment. And if possible, see if you can try this other way of meditating, which is each time you ask yourself, imoko, allow it to resonate, follow the program, and when you feel the doubt subside, take the time to ask yourself, imoko again, strike that temple bell again, and experience and keep your attention on the resonance of doubt until it again fades, and so forth until the end of today's program. So the topic of today's contemplation and meditation is networking. This is something that both my Korean and international friends have been bringing up a lot lately. More and more, it seems, in modern work culture, the importance of networking is becoming emphasized, especially since the proliferation of different kinds of communication systems and social media allows us to network much more broadly and much more frequently than ever before, actually, in human history. So as time passes, according to my friends, this idea that everyone must network is becoming more and more firmly entrenched in modern work culture. So I actually looked into it and came across a kind of joke, I guess, that's been spread within American work culture. And the joke, I mean, it's not a very funny joke, but the joke runs kind of like this. You may ask, is networking that important? And the answer is, no, it's not that important. It's the most important thing. Now, this can cause a lot of stress to people, and I have found that among the people around me that there seem to be three basic kinds of reactions. And in the first kind of reaction, especially among the younger students and the younger people that I have the privilege and joy of meeting with and sharing these meditation teachings with, what I hear is something like, I'm just not a very social person. I don't like networking. It's very unpleasant to me because I feel that it's very false. I feel like I'm always pretending to be something that I'm not, that it is not a genuine human encounter. It's completely exhausting. I don't like it. And it's causing stress in my life, and I'm experiencing a lot of social anxiety over it. So do I have to network? So that's one kind of response that I hear. Another kind is actually quite the opposite. And the second type of response comes usually from older, more experienced members of the modern workforce. And these kinds of people who have a different kind of personality entirely will say something like, I feel like I am networking all the time. I feel like I am in permanent networking mode, that I am always trying to manage my social relationships, and the boundaries between my personal and professional life are beginning to break down, meaning that I am in the same mode all the time. I am constantly wearing masks. I am constantly trying to fulfill a social role, whether it's a personal one or a professional one. I am constantly following a social script. I am wearing so many masks that I forgot what I look like. I can no longer see the face that's supposedly under all those masks. and I no longer have genuine human encounters anymore. Even though I'm considered very socially effective, even though I'm considered very popular, and that I have and people often envy my broad network of social contacts. So this is another response to networking, you know, where clearly a certain kind of advice or support or help is being asked for. And finally, among my friends who are very, very committed to you know, meditative practice and who identify themselves as spiritual cultivators, as primarily spiritual cultivators, what I hear is that I feel like networking is a threat to my spiritual practice. It doesn't suit me. It makes me very uncomfortable, and I feel like it hinders my spiritual progress. Isn't a truly spiritual person someone who renounces the social network altogether? So these are three different types of responses, and I would like to go through each kind of response separately because each kind of response reflects a different kind of personality, I believe, and a different kind of set of social skills. So in the first response, where a person may say, I don't enjoy it, I'm not good at it, I'm not sociable, I find it, you know, at best false, at worst hypocritical, do I absolutely have to network? And I would like to say that if your career or your lifestyle permits it, then no, you don't have to network. I don't think we should think of networking as some kind of absolute law or standard that everyone, regardless of you know, occupation and position and career aspiration, absolutely everyone has to do. But the truth is that probably most careers, most occupations require some level of networking. And this creates a problem for us. What if we're in a position where I have certain career goals, certain career ambitions, and so forth that I want to achieve, and my career requires me to network, but I absolutely detest and can't stand and don't enjoy and I'm not good at networking? What happens then? And I think, first of all, when we're in this situation where we feel that we absolutely must network even though we don't want to, the first thing to understand, I think, is that we don't have to take it so seriously. No one is asking for absolute authenticity and true intimacy in the networking experience. A networking relationship is very limited in scope and purpose. And because it's limited, we don't have to feel like it threatens our identity and it will overwhelm us. Doesn't mean that we are absolutely bound together. It doesn't mean that we are supposed to be absolutely loyal to each other. We are simply trying to create a mutually helpful relationship that is limited both emotionally and socially. When we begin to understand this, we don't have to ask it to be so profound, nor do we have to blame it for failing to be profound. Another thing that I think a lot of young people who are less experienced in sort of the professional culture and modern society, they often feel like you have to have a certain kind of personality to be a successful networker. You have to be charming and sociable and, you know, charismatic and, you know, really persuasive. And there's a certain image of networking that I think many of us subconsciously harbor. But again, the purpose of networking is not to create lifelong bonds and not to create genuine, authentic, intense friendships. And because of that, you don't need a specific kind of personality to network effectively. Really, in a networking situation, you merely need to be able to present yourself as professionally competent and reasonably trustworthy. So you don't have to portray yourself as a desirable friend. You simply have to portray yourself as a reliable and potentially helpful work partner. Again, within a very, very limited scope. If we understand that we don't have to put on such a show, the burden of performance is not upon us in networking. And it's not a competition either. The more social contacts you make, the better your networking is. That's not a rule. You simply need to make the social context the kind of relationships that you yourself individually need to achieve your own unique personal and professional goals. And that's it. You determine all the standards. Nobody, the world is not asking you to network in a specific way. So we can take the burden of performance off of ourselves, the burden of grading ourselves socially and otherwise, when we feel actually the demand of networking placed upon us. Now, in addition to those kinds of observations that I share, I would like to offer some very practical suggestions, and that is this. If we find ourselves in a situation where we feel truly unsuited to the social demands of networking, and we truly don't like it, and we know we don't like it, and we know we'll never like it, and yet we must go into a situation where we must network, then what I would like to suggest is the following procedure. And it's a very concrete procedure. First of all, we need to make the resolution within ourselves. We need to accept within ourselves that for the duration of the networking event, whatever it is, a dinner, a meeting, some kind of event, for that duration, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, or several days, for that duration, we will have to admit and accept the reality that we will be socially and emotionally uncomfortable. We are going to very deliberately accept that we are undertaking something that is uncomfortable. And this is how we build the proper attitude or posture to get through what for us is a difficult situation. The second thing that I would like to suggest is meditate before actually entering the networking event. Get yourself to a point of physical and mental centeredness. And then finally, after the networking event, now you might think meditate again, but actually I will suggest do not meditate immediately after the networking event. Because especially if you're a beginning meditator, most likely during the networking event, you've experienced all kinds of different forms of emotional discomfort and awkwardness and what you feel to be embarrassment and emotional pain and so forth. And you need to get over this. So give yourself a reward. Give yourself a reward for getting through that uncomfortable duration. Go do something for yourself that you enjoy. Eat something that you like, do something recreational, and release that negativity and console and comfort yourself. Because if you don't, if you try to enter into meditation immediately, what will happen is you'll relive all the most unpleasant events of that networking event during your meditation. So give yourself a little break first, calm yourself down, get yourself to a point of inner comfort, and then meditate and use the meditation to cleanse away whatever unpleasant after effects a networking event may have left within you. And then maybe we can slowly get used to the idea of incorporating networking into our lives. Now, in the second example, where someone is a very skillful networker but feel that they are somehow losing their true selves in this endless web of social relations and social events and social duties and roles that are being played. And they feel like, their true face is being lost beneath all those masks. And we begin to feel like no one really knows who I am. And I can't really be myself with anyone anymore. Now, the common sense often suggests a solution to that is then create a set of very intimate, authentic relationships. And with those people, you can be yourself, and you can be authentic, and you can be open, warts and all, and then that should solve it. Create the right kind of relationship for yourself. Now, the difficulty with that, the problem with that experienced networkers know, that people who are highly socially skilled and highly socially competent know, is that the truth is every single relationship creates social roles. There really is no such thing as a totally naked, face-to-face human encounter. All relationships are mediated by culture, customs, and social practices. We are always wearing a mask. And what networkers realize is that even in our closest relationships, not just our casual relationships, not just our professional obligation, those kinds of relationships, but even with our closest friends, our closest family members, even with our spouses and our significant others, we are somehow always wearing a mask. And so then we begin to feel maybe human beings are just born alone. Maybe there's just a part of us that cannot make contact with the world. And we begin to feel this very powerful sense of isolation. Now, what I would like to suggest, if that's the kind of situation we find ourselves in with regard to networking and the overall network of social relationships that we happen to be embedded in or that we happen to have created, is maybe we can ask ourselves, are we an extroverted personality? And by extroverted personality, I'm just going to informally suggest that means someone who gains energy by being with others. And the opposite, introverted personality, I'm going to suggest will be someone who loses energy, who feels energy drained from being with others and so feels a tendency to avoid them. So extroverts will find themselves drawn to social relationships. Introverts will find themselves tending to be repelled by close contact with other people. So if we are this kind of person and we find ourselves constantly drawn, constantly feeling ourselves engaging social relationships, maybe we can ask ourselves that maybe in this whole process of devoting so much time and energy and resources and thought to creating social relationships and maintaining them, maybe we have been avoiding or neglecting our own inner selves, our inner world, our own true thoughts and feelings, and the source of those true thoughts and feelings. Maybe the social relationships have been used as a means of getting away from ourselves, intentionally or unintentionally. What we need to understand about what we're calling social masks or social roles or social scripts is that social roles and social masks function to bring us together. They create a procedure for us to approach one another and to find points of contact. But what we fail to recognize is they also function. One of their purposes is also to keep us apart, for there not to be too much contact with each other. So in that sense, maybe the proper word for a mask is a filter. They allow what's appropriate to be passed to be exchanged with one another, but they hold back what is inappropriate, because every single human being carries within themselves dark, destructive forces that, if they are expressed in our human relationships or in our behavior, will cause all kinds of suffering, and no good will come out of it. So the masks are there for a reason. And true, total, full-on contact between human beings may not be as desirable as all these romantic stories and movies suggest. Maybe it's there for a purpose. And maybe if we feel like we're alone in the crowd, we are alone in the web of relationships, the problem is not that we don't have the right kind of relationship. The problem is that in creating and maintaining all of those relationships, we have turned away from our inner selves. We are not disconnected from others. We are not disconnected from the world. We are disconnected from ourselves. Then the solution becomes not creating another kind of relationship, but reconnecting with ourselves. And once again, then, the solution can be meditation. So once again, I will offer a practical suggestion. And that is, if you are the kind of person who finds himself constantly engaging in relationships, constantly performing one social role or another, constantly presenting themselves within the context of certain kinds of relationships and social duties, then take the time every day to be alone with yourself. Take the time to meditate. We must create alone time for ourselves and face ourselves And this is not easy. When we face ourselves, inevitably, we come into contact with and we begin to see parts of ourselves that we would rather not face. And the thing about a socially skillful or socially attractive person is that it's so easy to run away. You would rather see other people seeing you as the way you want to be seen than to actually see yourself. You would rather see yourself reflected in the eyes of those who like you or love you or envy you than to actually see yourself in the mirror. So we must at all costs avoid the temptation of getting up from our meditation or out of our alone time and going to, talk with someone for a heart-to-heart talk. So this is a struggle that we may find if we have highly social personalities to make alone time for ourselves and then to stick to it. Finally, in the third example, among people who are very committed to spiritual practice and who identify as meditators, we often find a kind of personality type who kind of look at the world and look at spiritual practice as an effort, an enterprise in trying to transcend this dirty, dark, chaotic, illusory realm of suffering, to transcend that and enter into a higher, pure, luminous, orderly, and blissful realm of truth. So you're trying to get away from one place and get to another. Now, Sun Master Songdam always says in his words that you do not transcend the suffering of birth and death by leaving it. You transcend it. You transcend birth and death in the midst of birth and death. And that means whatever you're experiencing right then and there, if it's emotional displeasure or discomfort, is not something that you use meditation to escape. It is an opportunity to engage with meditation. You seek out the source, the thing within yourself that is experiencing that emotional discomfort or that emotional suffering. Spirituality cannot be used as an excuse to avoid social contact. Now, this is a very common teaching within Buddhism. And the difficulty that many spiritual practitioners experience is that we know this theoretically in our minds, but temperamentally, we feel that we are introverts. We simply feel uncomfortable around each other, and we have an instant avoidant response to others, and we feel an emotional need to constantly be renouncing things. Now, what I would like to say to address that is that nonetheless, we need to learn to use meditation to regulate and overcome those initial avoidant, aversive emotional responses. We need to bear in mind that it was the Buddha himself who created the monastic community and taught his followers to practice together, to rely on one another, and to draw strength from one another. So avoiding social situations is not a sign of greater spirituality. In Buddhist history, there are two ideals, two models of spiritual practice. One is that of the hermit, the solitary practitioner who lives in the mountains by himself and just practices. And they have put the world behind them. They have transcended the world of suffering and illusion. The other model of spiritual practice is that of the monastic who practices in a community. And each model has its own sort of strengths and limitations. The hermit will criticize the monastic practitioner as still being enmeshed in some kind of society and all the hypocrisy and all the politics and all the lies that all human societies have. The practitioner who lives in a monastic community will criticize the hermit for being sort of having an allergic reaction and for having a limited understanding of the ultimate unity of purity and impurity. What I would like to suggest in conclusion of today's discussion is that maybe the ideal of the hermit and the ideal of community practice are not two separate paths in life, but actually two separate skill sets that every human being needs to learn. Maybe we need to learn the skill of being alone that is symbolized by the image of the hermit. And maybe we also need to learn the skill of being with and interacting with others. No one is ever truly alone. Even if you're a hermit, unless you are literally going out and getting straw and sewing it together to make your own clothes and chipping stones to make your own tools and make your own house and catch or grow your own food, and you have zero human contact and zero reliance on human products. If you have clothes made by other people, and most hermits do, if you're supported by other people, then you are not truly alone. You have not truly gained autonomy. On the other hand, you may be living in a monastic community where literally you are with other people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That actually happens in the early period of our monastic careers. Nonetheless, no matter how connected you will be with other people, nonetheless, within ourselves, we will always be a little bit alone. So we need to know how to be able to do both things. And when we are able to do both things, then we can overcome the problems that things like networking pose for us. This is the way that Sun Master Songdam first taught us, his disciples. When we become monastics, he teaches us to take jobs and learn how to meditate with others, so that we learn how to be both alone and with others. So this is the suggestion that I would like to make. If you are someone who is sort of allergic to social relationships, take the time to learn to be with others. If you're someone who is too immersed in social relationships, take the time to learn how to be alone. And if you are a spiritual practitioner who's serious about meditation, take the time to learn how to be both alone and with others. Why don't we take a break here, and when we get back, we will enter into the inner voice. Hello again, and welcome to the Inner Voice. This week, we have been sent a video-recorded question from a young man named Edouard Alabro, who is from France and who is currently attending the Graduate School of International Studies at Seoul National University.
안녕하십니까? Thank you, Mr. Hwansan, for offering me the opportunity to ask you a question. Well, as you may know, I am looking for a job in Korea, and I've been looking for some time, maybe 9 months already. However, this research, this quest, has not been successful so far, and for almost every letter of motivation that I write, I receive a letter of refusal. So after this kind of repeated refusals, I feel a bit disappointed with myself for not being able to fit to the needs of any company here in Korea. And the biggest problem I encounter is actually whenever I make a new application, I kind of imagine myself working in the company. So this creates in myself hope, and I spend a lot of energy with this hope and imagining myself working for this company. And what happened so far is that for every time I've gotten very enthusiastic about a potential life in a company, taking interviews and so on, every time I've been even more disappointed when they actually refused me at the end of the recruitment process. So I would like to ask if you have any advice on this. Would you maybe recommend me to be less enthusiastic when I apply, or on the contrary, to keep being enthusiastic? But I don't know, actually, I don't know. So if you have any advice on this, I would be very interested to hear it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Edouard, for your question. And I think your question is especially important in today's incredibly competitive global job market. There are many, many people who are facing the same difficulties that you are. So I think that in raising this question, you've addressed something very, very relevant. And actually, I would like to suggest for you, I gave quite a bit of thought to your question, and I would like to suggest for you a very concrete, strategic approach to dealing with these different kinds of difficulties that you described. And I will call this approach the 4 R's. 4 steps that you can take when you are faced with the kind of disappointment and discouragement that you've just described. So the first R is recovery. We must not underestimate the pain and the exhaustion that we feel in the face of what feels like rejection. We feel like we took the best of ourselves, put it into the resume and into the cover letter, and really portrayed ourselves in the most flattering light that we can imagine, and then suddenly it's just, we feel tossed aside. And this is a great blow to our pride, our self-esteem. It causes us to question ourselves, and it is almost inevitably painful. Even when it comes from someone you've never met, even when it comes from some monolithic, seemingly non-human company. The fact is that the experience of rejection, the experience of feeling unappreciated and devalued is very, very difficult, and therefore we need to give ourselves recovery time. Now, I think you're going to know what I'm going to say next is, how do we recover? Again, meditate. The problem when you've been rejected is that an enormous crowd of voices arises in our head, where some of those voices tell us, we say all different kinds of things to ourselves. We don't deserve to be treated this way. They don't get it. Maybe I did something wrong. So there's a very confusing, chorus of voices in our head. We don't quite know how to interpret the situation. We only know that we just simply feel bad. So rather than try to persuade ourselves of a certain point of view and say, well, the company just wasn't looking for someone like me, or they don't appreciate me, or maybe I didn't do a good job on it. Don't try to make a conclusion about what happened, because we simply don't have enough information. We simply weren't there when they were looking at our cover letter and our resume and assessing our application. So use meditation to disconnect from the overthinking and overwrought emotions that almost inevitably follow upon something that's so important to us as a rejected job application. Take the time to meditate. Literally, take time and space to meditate and calm down. So the first is to recover. Then the next is to recharge. We feel depleted. We feel discouraged. We need to get our energy level back up again. There are different ways to recharge. You can use meditation, or you can use one of your own personal habits. Think of a way that you can, a clear-cut, concrete method that you can use to empower yourself again and to regain your confidence. So that's recover, recharge, and then reflect. Reflect upon what possible improvements that you can make. Remember the Buddhist approach to reflection. We're going to look for the causes and conditions of whatever consequence we've experienced. This isn't personal. This isn't about judging ourselves and grading ourselves. In the situation of a job application, I have very limited control of the outcome. All really I can do is prepare a good application. Everything else that happens afterward is in the hands of others. So approach only those things that are under our control and see what we can do to improve them. What others think of us, how others may react to us, all of those things are not our concern. So reflect very clearly on what I can do for my part of it, and keep trying to improve and develop ourselves so that we don't feel like we're sending in the same exact application every single time, and we feel like we're increasing our skill over time. And so we need this process of self-reflection. And then finally, number 4, re-engage. So that's recover, recharge, reflect, make conclusions, and then re-engage. Now, you very specifically asked me, whether you should allow yourself to regenerate the same level of enthusiasm. And there's a clear worry here that you may meet the same pain of disappointment and discouragement. And what I would like to say is, use your enthusiasm strategically. Use meditation as your method of emotional regulation. We need that inspiration and enthusiasm to infuse our job application. You can't write an inspiring cover letter or a striking resume if you're not filled with energy and confidence and hope. And you need to be able to convey that in any kind of communication you may have with them, written or in an interview situation. So definitely tap into your enthusiasm. But once the application is in, once the interview is over, use your meditation to come back down again and put it down. Learn how to control the flow of your enthusiasm so that it doesn't create all these painful reactions when these hopes are not met. So we can use this difficult process of making job applications as an exercise in learning to control the flow of my thoughts, the flow of my emotions, and in learning to become strategic in how I approach the important undertakings of my life, especially those in which I have limited control. So once again, that's recover, recharge, refresh, reflect, re-engage, and learn to control your enthusiasm. That doesn't mean curbing it. It just means learning how to turn it up and then turning it back down again. So Eduard, I tried to give you as practical and concrete a response as possible because you are dealing with very serious real-world issues. I hope this is very helpful for you. I hope this is helpful for you. And once again, I thank you for sharing your concerns with us and for being interested in our program. And I wish you good luck in your future endeavors. May we all attain the Buddha. And now, with 3 strikes of the bamboo clapper, we enter the closing session of meditation. Please assume proper meditation posture.